This is going to be a great program. It is put together by Ole Miss journalism professor Alysia Steele, and I'm going to turn the program over to her to do the program and further introductions. But first, I'm going to let the most appropriate person in the world introduce her husband, Bobby. Thank you.
Thank y'all for coming. What can I say about my wife? Well, first off, credentials. She was a former picture editor of the Dallas Morning News. She was also part of the photo team that won a Pulitzer in 2006 for their coverage of Hurricane Katrina. She's the former deputy director of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and she started working here in the Meek School of Journalism in 2012 and dragged me with her. She teaches photojournalism and multimedia. Here are some fun facts. To get this project where it is now, she has done 118 hours of interviews. She has spent countless hours driving back and forth to the Delta, getting lost and calling me and asking me to find out where she's at. Most of you don't know, but GPS does not work real well in the Delta. She's driven over 6,735 miles and counting. She's been through one flash flood, one tornado watch, and countless stray dogs that she's wanted to pick up and bring home, and I just won't allow that to happen. In fact, she says she wanted me to let you know that the last puppy she saw, the puppy's name was Lambert. And
it was in Lambert.
Oh, it was in Lambert. I'm sorry, it was in Lambert. And then she called me and she said, "Can we please bring the puppy home? It's a puppy." I'm like, there's going to be puppies everywhere. This is the South. I don't know why they don't pick up the dogs. But as you see, we still have a cat, and it didn't get to come home. Without further ado, I want to introduce Alysia Steele, who's going to try to come up here and let you know exactly a moment in her life that I'm very proud of, and to say that I've been a part of it as well. Thank you.
I'm a little nervous, so forgive me. First, I want to acknowledge very special people here. Reverend Hawkins, my partner in crime, Mount Bayou and his wife. My mother, Stella Duncan from New Jersey, flew in for this. Mrs. Bearden and Mrs. Floyd, two of the jewels in the book. Jerome and Tracy Mims, her sons, Mrs. Floyd's sons. Marilyn, your husband, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, sir. Lloyd Robinson from Memphis, correct? Bill Luckett, who gave me my first break with the names of Reverend Self and his wife. So I just wanted to thank you all for being here. So people ask me why I wanted to do this project. I'm going to try really hard not to cry. I did this before my grandmother. I said I wasn't going to do this. I'm sorry.
That's no fair.
My grandmother raised me, and she passed away 20 years ago. And I never had the foresight to get her stories or take her picture, which is a shame because I'm a trained photographer. And when I moved down here, I started thinking about her. I saw the cotton fields. She was a little Southern woman from South Carolina. And her family name was the name of a town in South Carolina called Aiken, which makes me think that she was a slave or she came from slaves. And my great-grandmother did not like to talk about her history. And I never pushed the issue. And when I saw that cotton, I couldn't help but wonder how many people broke their backs and their spirits picking that cotton. I'm gonna fix this, okay. So Mickey's gonna do her thing. And so I thought it's too late to tell my grandmother's story in her words. I will never hear her voice again. But it's not too late to honor other people's grandmothers. And so Bill Rose gave me my first introduction to the Delta. Thank you. I went on his death reporting class and fell in love with the Delta and the people. I was just enchanted. And I thought there's no better place to do a story than the mothers and the grandmothers in the Delta. So I started working on it. I didn't have any funds. I didn't have a grant. Bobby and I scraped our money together, and I just drove. Bill Lucky gave me the names of 5 pastors, and I reached out to Reverend Self, who was in Clarksdale, and I said, Reverend Self, I want to do this project, and I need your help. Reverend Self is also the architect that redesigned the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis. And he's also a pastor of First Baptist Church in Clarksdale, which is the first church, I believe, Martin Luther King spoke at. Is that correct? Outside of Atlanta? Outside of Atlanta. So Reverend Self said, well, you got to come to church. I got to meet you. Then you're going to have dinner at my mom's house. And the entire family interviewed me around the kitchen table. And I fell in love with his mother, Miss Tenney, who's featured in Southern Living magazine. And so that started my break. And then he gave me the name of Reverend Hawkins. I don't know how many women you gave me and you referred me to, sir. I think it was around 12 to 14 women. He called them and he said, you all need to help her do this book. And featured tonight are 2 mothers that I especially love, Mrs. Floyd and Mrs. Bearden. So where do I start and tell you about the stories? I think I have 50 new grandmothers. I think of them as my grandmothers. And so I'll tell you some of the behind-the-scenes stories, and then I'm going to play some audio. What I've done is I've interviewed them. Some of them don't like to be interviewed, and then I end up spending 3 hours at their house. Some of them welcome me with open arms and feed my husband. And Mrs. Campbell in Mount Bayou, she has a very slow, low voice like Maya Angelou. I fall in love every time I hear her talk. Very slow, very deliberate. She was married to her husband for 69 years when he passed away last year. And I just had audio. I didn't think to do video. So all my journalism students out there, my photojournalism students, listen to what I'm saying. I asked her what she missed about her husband. She didn't say a word. She didn't look at me. And she asked her daughter to go grab his picture off the piano. And she said, Mama, she don't care about the picture. She said, do what I said. So the daughter got the picture, and she used her hands and she traced his face. And she still hadn't said a word to me. And tears started to come down her face. And she said, I miss everything. I love her. And every time I go by Mount Bayou, I always call her to see her. And one day I was driving, and it was a tornado watch. My feet were soaked from going from one house to another. And I took my sandals off. It's in August. It's 90-some degrees. And I knock on her door and I take my shoes off. And she said, child, why are you taking your shoes off? I said, I don't want to drag water in your house. So she had her daughter give me white tube socks and said, put these on, you're going to catch pneumonia. I said, Miss Campbell, it's 90-some degrees in August. I don't think I'm going to get pneumonia. And she said, you young people are so hard-headed. I said, but I love you. And she said, well, if you love me, you do what I told you to do. Mrs. Howard, Bill Luckett's wife, thinks of her as a mother. Mrs. Howard is 92, and she lives in Clarksdale. She's a handful. In fact, I'm taking my mother to meet her. And I said, I'm bringing my mother to come see you. She said, how sweet it is. That's what she says after everything, how sweet it is. Mrs. Howard passed for white. And I said, why did you pass for white? And she said, well, if they thought that I was white, why not let them think that? I could get fresh, hot hamburgers from the front door instead of the alley. And for the students that don't know, sometimes most restaurants wouldn't allow blacks to come through the front door to order food. They had to go to the alley. It might not have been the best meat. It might not have been hot. And she thought if they were going to let her think that she was white, she was going to go ahead and act like she was white. Mrs. Moore, Bobby's girlfriend. Mrs. Moore has 15 children, 145 grandchildren, 33 great-grandchildren, and 23 great-greats. When I interviewed her, I would say there were probably 20 people in that house. And for those that know, when you collect audio, you need quiet. I did not get quiet. It took me an hour to get a story from her. The story that's not in the book, but I'm going to do something with it, is that she was in church and a woman behind her was talking about how fine her husband was. And Miss Moore decided to confront the woman and said, let's go outside. And the woman said, I'm not going outside. She said, oh, yes, you are. She said, I dragged her out to church. I said, well, what did you drag her by? She said, I dragged her by the arm, but I would have dragged her by whatever. So I said, well, what did you do when you got outside? She said, I punched her square between the eyes. And I said, what'd you do after that? And see, what you don't know is that some of the mothers, you have to keep asking questions. You have to have the tenacity to keep going. And she said, well, my mama came out the church and said, child, you know you're wrong. And she said, Mama, I'm not wrong. I didn't hit her in the church. I hit her outside the church. And I said, well, what'd you do after that? She said, I went back in and sat quite comfortably. Mrs. Eidelberg, Mountain Bayou, the bad girl of the book. She liked to take moonshine and feed it to the pigs and watch them get drunk and run in circles and fall over. She's laughing as she's telling me that story. She also used to climb on her dad's roof when he would dry roast the peanuts and climb up on the roof and sit on the roof and eat all the peanuts and throw the shells on the ground. Mrs. Henry. Thank you for her, Reverend Hawkins. Mrs. Henry did not like me at first. I was at her house for about 3 hours. I said, Mrs. Henry, I need a story. I don't feel like talking to you today. Mrs. Henry's 91. I said, Mrs. Henry, do you want to be in this book? She said, well, yes. I said, well, then you have to tell me a story. She said, I don't feel like talking to you. I can't remember nothing. Her son and her daughter were there, and he said, Mama, you know, you just told me a story about the mule. She said, I'm not talking to her. So I called Reverend Hawkins. Do you remember this day? I said, Reverend, I'm calling Reverend Hawkins right now and telling him you're being difficult. And she said, call him. So I took out my phone and I called him. She said, you're calling him? I said, yes, ma'am, I'm calling him. Gave him the phone. I don't know what you said to her. She started talking. I said, Miss Henry, when I'm done, I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you your picture and I'm going to read your words to you. After I interview all the mothers, as a journalist, we tend not to show our content. But these women have let me into their lives and have shared very personal stories, and I'm going to share some with you. And the least I can do is go back and get their approval. Now, we haven't butted heads on anything yet. So I have 3 more women in the book will be done. I'll have them done next week. So I said, Miss Henry, I'm going to come back. She said, okay. I came back a couple months later. She said, you came back. I said, I'm a woman of my word. I read her words to her. I showed her her picture and she cried. She said, you cleaned it up pretty good. I said, I didn't clean it up. See, my book has their photographs, and then on the other, every mother has 2 pages in my book. One is her photograph that I've taken, and the other are her words, poignant highlights of her life that I transcribe word for word what they say. She said, I said that? I said, yes, ma'am, you said that. She said, I sound pretty good. She said, and I like my picture. And I chose that picture because she's looking at me like, child, if you don't hurry up and take this picture. Mrs. Horton. Mrs. Horton is 75, and she lives in Charleston. And when we scheduled the interview, and she doesn't tell me until the end of the interview that it was her birthday. And I said, why didn't you tell me? She said, this was my special treat to myself. I'm going to read her story to you. All she ever wanted to do was to go to Tuskegee Institute. And she did. It took her 10 years to get her master's degree. And she paid her way through college, but she also paid her brother and sister's tuition. She would not get married until she paid for their education. Mrs. Young, her great-granddaughter's in the audience. She goes here at Ole Miss, Anaya. Don't you cry? Mrs. Young, I'm going to tell her story, Anaya. Mrs. Young lives in Memphis with her daughter, correct? She's 92. She looks beautiful, doesn't she? The first story she tells me is that her husband is the first black police officer for Ruleville. 1967. Fast forward 5 years, 1972. He takes a week off of work. He doesn't feel right. Not that he's sick, he has a bad feeling. He decides to go to work on Sunday. He's picking at his food. He won't eat his food. She said, baby, what's wrong? He said, I just got a funny feeling. She said, well, call off another day. He said, I just took a week off. I can't do that. 5:30, he gets dressed. Still has a bad feeling. When he leaves, she watches him from the door and he drives off. She sits in her chair and she grabs their marriage license and looks at it. Sits in the rocking chair. What you don't know is that week that he took off, there was a domestic violence case at someone's home. The wife calls the station. He answers the call when he goes back to work on Sunday. He goes to the house. There's a husband who's upset with a police officer breaking up the domestic case. He goes to the police officer's home to shoot him. Her husband takes the call and tries to intercept it, and he's too late. And they're both having guns. And her husband steps in the middle and it's a white police officer and a Mexican man. He says, don't shoot him. The white officer didn't stop in time and shot her husband through the heart, killed him. She's telling me these stories and I'm asking questions, but what I really want to know is what did she cook him for dinner? It's gnawing at me. But I ask her other questions because I need other details, but I really want to get back to that, but I don't want to seem insensitive. But something's telling me, my instincts are telling me to ask her about that dinner. She said, of course I remember what I made him. I made him chicken, dressing, collard greens, and coconut cake. He loved my cake. It was my birthday. So those are the behind the scenes stories. I think I'll let you listen to some audio and then I'm going to read. And if I can convince Mrs. Floyd to come out here, Mrs. Bearden will come. I'm going to try to get you to come up here and answer some questions at the end. No? Right to the end. So let's play some audio. Now, Mrs. Floyd, I'm going to put you on blast right now. Mrs. Bearden calls me and says, I want you to go to church with me for Black History Day. Do you remember that? Yeah. And I said, I'll try to come. She said, I'll see you then. And she hung up. I said, Bobby, I guess we're going to church. It's 2 hours away. We get dressed and we go. Sitting next to my grandma. Marilyn, I hope you don't mind sharing her. And I see this little one right here in the front. And I said, oh, she got a story. I want her story. Ms. Bearden says, wait till after church, you can talk to her. So I go to Mrs. Floyd after church. I said, Ms. Floyd, I want you in the book. I don't want to be in your book. I said, Mrs. Floyd, I really want you in my book. Didn't I tell you I didn't want to be in your book? Here's my card. You can give me the card. I said I didn't want to be in the book. So I said, Ms. Bearden, I really want Ms. Floyd. She said, talk to me in a couple weeks. Call me. I call her. She said, well, she's talked to me about it. Here's her number. Go ahead and call her. I call her. I said, do you know who this is? Yes, I know who this is, Miss Lisa. I want you in my book. I didn't forget you. Didn't I tell you I didn't want to be in your book? You gave me the card. If I wanted to be in the book, I would have called you. Mrs. Bearden and her son Tracy talked her into getting in the book. I get to her house. She's standing at the front door like this. Hello, Miss Lisa. I said, hello, Miss Floyd. We gonna get along today? Yes, come on in. I interview her. I stay 3.5 hours, didn't I? 3.5 hours. And she said, if I had known it was gonna be this much fun, I would have said yes a long time ago. I said, all I need are 2 or 3 stories. This woman gave me 8 stories. Here's one of them.
Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. is good enough for me. I was baptized in a white gown with the white bandana around my head. And it was just one Sunday. And it was a gorgeous experience. It had, well, you know snakes be in pools and frogs, but God didn't let them bite us. And I remember Reverend Paulson today when he do this command, carried me under the water and brought me up. Then the sister was saying, Father, I stretch my hands to thee. No other help I know. If thou withdraw thyself from me, oh, whither shall I go? Those were some good days. It was a beautiful time, and people shouting on the pool bank. Every time one go down and come up, they would shout. We don't have that now. It was just a day I can hardly explain. It was the greatest experience my soul ever had. Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. Give me that old time religion. It's good enough for me. I can hear him singing that right now.
I loved his style, and he was wild about mine, so I thought he was just really beautiful. That's cute. And I just really loved this man. He wasn't real tall, no. And he wasn't no fat neither, because I ain't never liked a big old man. So, I knew I was cute. I knew that I was. Because everybody would tell me, you is one pretty young lady. So, and then when he told me, I knew I was. When he told me about it, that made me feel really, really good.
All right, so I'm going to stop for a second. The next story is Mrs. Richardson, Tunica. She's 88. This is the first story she tells me. 1955, there's a tornado in Tunica. She has 7 children. She had 3 that died that day. Her son was 7, and he could see in the future. And she used to always get tired of him telling her, I saw something. So he comes to her and tells her he sees a tornado coming. And she tells him to go back outside and play. The next day, a tornado comes. I have just a little bit of her story. She's holding 3 children in her house, and her arm breaks and she can't hold them. The front of the house gets ripped off and one goes out. He goes through a limb. He dies 2 days later. This is a part of what she said.
We was on the 11th in 55 when the tornado come and killed 3 of my children. And I was hurt real bad. The day before the storm, I had a boy called his name Nathaniel Jr. He was 6, 7. And all of them was outdoors playing. And he come in the house and I asked him, I said, you can't go outdoors? You always seeing something. What you see now? He said, a tornado coming and a storm coming, it's going to kill all of us. And I said, oh, no, you don't know what you're talking about. You go back outdoors. And so he went on back, and the next morning about 11 o'clock, tornado come. The front of the house just tore up, and that's where we were. And we were scattered in different directions. One of them was saying, hold me, my dear. And I said, I can't. That time my arm went down, broke. The people was running from everywhere. I was in the hospital. They put me in the bed. Junior was laying on the floor. SMA was laying on the floor. And SMA was saying, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. I had that get me. Daddy, 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 oh, Daddy. That's the way she died.
How do you interview somebody after that? I just let her talk. There was nothing I could say. I'm just honored that she wanted to share something so personal with me. The other story that she told me that'll be in the book is that she worked picking cotton on a plantation. And for all the students and people that don't know, they used to bring a barrel of water and everybody would drink from that water. And 2 water boys, or whatever they're called, took baths in their drinking water. And then they would dump dead possums in their water too. And that's what they drank. And what I've learned through this is that sometimes audio is not enough. Sometimes you have to interview, because you can't get their personalities just in audio. And so I had to go back. I love to visit Mrs. Bearden anyway. I don't know how many times I've been at your house. And every time I come, she say, "You spend the night?" I said, "I'm going to. I'm going to spend the weekend with you and document you." And here's her story. Her husband, Captain Bearden, she's getting ready to board a plane after World War II to go see him in Frankfurt, Germany with their 2 daughters. And here's what happens.
Living out on the farm.
Oh, nope, sorry. Let me back up. Anaya's aunt. So the mother's in the book and her daughter's in the book. I'm sorry. This is another story. Mrs. Bearden's
Picking
next.
cat and chopping cat. The white children, they would start school August just like they do now. But we in Biles having to go to the field, pick cat and chop cat, we would start school in September instead of August. So when we pick catting, and like, you know, we put these sacks over our shoulder and pull and pick cat, and I looked and worms would be crawling up my sack, coming up to my shoulder. Then here I go screaming and hollering. Mama would get on me, whip me sometime. "Girl, you gotta pick cotton." I do okay till I see a worm. Then here I go standing looking across the field. And one day I like reached up to scratch my head and came down with a worm in my hand. And ooh, that was the frighteningest thing I had ever went through, but I was just afraid of them. But I could pick okay, but it's all we went through, like to miss out on school and, you know, to work in the field.
Okay, Mrs. Bearden's next.
We were on there, African Americans were on there. At that time, integration had just begun, just a little bit. So all the ladies on there were talking among themselves. They were not talking to me. And I didn't butt into anything to talk to them. And it was some captain wife is on here. Wonder where is she? They would wonder if that's she over there. Wonder where is it? They go to them. Where's that captain's wife? Where's that captain's wife? And I was just letting them talk. So after a while, the sergeant called. He said, "We're getting ready now to board. And we're going to board this plane, the flight, according to your husband's ranks. Seat number 1, Captain Rogers H. Bearden and his dependents." And I said, "Excuse me, please." I had to pass by them. I said, and after that, they looked at each other. They were so surprised because they didn't think it would be anybody except me, you see. So after that, they were so friendly. They hadn't been though, but they were so friendly. "Miss Bearden this and Miss Bearden that, Miss Bearden this." Well, that's the way it was until we got to Frankfurt, Germany.
But you know,
Aren't they jewels? Reverend Self's mother, Miss Tinney, is another one of my favorites. The first one I photographed, actually. And when I photographed her, she gave me less than 5 minutes. She said, "Hurry up, I got food cooking on the stove. Hurry up and take this picture." Miss Tinney has no problem speaking up for herself. That's the one thing that I love about her. The story that she also told me, it's not the one that I'm getting ready to tell you. But the story that I love, there's so many from all of them, but the one that I really particularly love from Miss Tinney, who I'm taking my mom to see tomorrow, she told me if I didn't come see her, she was going to come find me. Miss Tinney wanted to buy a Cadillac in 1949 or 1950. She went to a Clarksdale dealership and they refused to sell her the car. Miss Tinney drove to Memphis and bought a Cadillac and drove past that dealership every day and honked the horn and waved at them. And I think her words pretty much sum how I feel.
but you know, you have to speak up for yourself. Yeah, I've never had any trouble speaking up for myself, even during the civil rights.
Talk to me about that.
So it's just if something happened and I need to speak, I just speak. And I feel like if I got to die for the thing that I feel like is right, so be it. That's right. Mm-hmm. And today's the same way. I do whatever I speak. I mean, after all, God made me too.
I don't know how I am with time. 28 minutes? I think we should open it up because I don't know if the mothers want to talk, but I would love for them. Please? I want you to come up here and answer some questions if people want to ask. Come on. Mr. Walker.
What?
Right here.
Simple question. Too much light.
I'm going to sit here with you, okay? Don't be mad at me. I know you're going to yell at me later. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask the mothers?
Okay.
Somebody, please. Yes.
When was the first time you traveled outside the Delta and what was it like?
What was the first time? What was it like?
When was the first time you traveled outside of the Delta and what was it like for you?
Outside of the Delta?
Oh, you're talking about.
Are you talking?
Well, the question the first time I traveled out the Delta was in 2007 when I went to California to visit my niece. And it was a beautiful experience. Well, I just had a wonderful time, and it was just great. I went to, what part of California is that, Tracy?
Los Angeles.
San Diego, yes. I think, was that right, Tracy? San Diego? That's right. Okay. And it was a beautiful, I spent about 2 weeks there, and they tried to get me to fly, but I didn't have wings, so I decided I would ride the Greyhound bus, and that was a good experience. We had a long layover in Texas, and it was great. I enjoyed it.
Mrs. Bearden?
Oh, outside of the Delta. Well, I'm really from the hills. I met a Delta man and married a Delta. That's how I got to the Delta. I met him in college at Tuskegee and married him. And I'm from the hills of Alabama. And I came to the Delta because of the man. But the man was really the right man, though he is. We came there with school, and he was the principal of the school. Mr. Luckett knows what school is. Alex County, Sumner, West District School. Bearden School, yeah. And we were, and he was, this is one of my students that I taught right here.
Reverend Hawkins.
And my daughter is back there.
And Reverend Hawkins, she told me all your stories too.
Oh my. But the Delta, we liked it. You know, I'm from the hills, but I love the Delta. I love the Delta one thing because the man was there, you know.
Okay. Deb, did you have a question?
I was wondering if either of you could talk about what it's like to be a church mother, what that means, and what role you play in the church through that designation, that honor.
Being a church mother is very, very interesting, and it's very, very rewarding here. Because if you grew up in the church, it's a part of your life, you know. And being in the Baptist church, it's just a part of our life. Going to Sunday school on Sunday, and being a mother, and being experience teaching Sunday school, and seeing the students progress, and then they progress, and then they marry, and then they have children. And mothers become, because of your experience, and they will come to you this way by. Oh, it's very rewarding here. And we take part, we control communion, we control most, you know,
and sometimes we participate in devotion service. And that's a good experience also. It's just a beautiful thing to be a mother.
And sometimes it just takes a mother to control and to get the church on going. And I think you'd be surprised what they're not thinking about. It just doesn't leave the church. Because the men are proud that they are our son. See, our mother, really mother.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I don't know if this question is considered too personal, but do you have your children at home with the help of a midwife, or did you have them at a hospital, and was it segregated or not?
I had my children in a hospital. That's Jerome. Shut up, Jerome. He was born in Charleston, Mississippi, under Dr. Lewis. Then I had Tracy, stand up, Tracy. And he was born, of course, I'm from the hills also, but I've been to Delta so long, I feel like I'm a Delta. But he was born in Oklahoma, Mississippi. And they both were born in the hospital. And Dr. Shoemaker delivered Tracy, and Dr. Lewis delivered Jerome. So both of them were born in the hospital. Did you have a midwife?
There were people having midwives to deliver the baby, but I never did. My girls were born in the hospital. The oldest girl, who lives in Miami, was born on her doctor's birthday at John A. Andrew Hospital at Tuskegee on the campus. And my second daughter, Marilyn Stan, she was born in Ryan Hospital in Meridian. And by the way, she is a baby specialist now from Vanderbilt Hospital in Nashville. She works out of there. She's a newborn specialist. And my third daughter, who was born in Charleston with Dr. Goods, who was one of the best. Dr. Goods was one of the best.
Dr. Wickham?
I wanted to know, when you heard that there was this woman traveling up and down the Delta who wanted to do this story, this book on you, what was your reaction?
Oh, I welcome you into my home. You're over man.
What'd she say?
She told you my reaction. Yes.
Hers was opposite.
I welcome, she had another to my home. And she promised me she was going to stay some weekend with me. Reverend Hawkins, our minister here, is the one informed us all about it.
Well, I told you my reaction. And the reason was I had seen her before with Mrs. Bearden. And she saw me at church. I did the Black History program. And all of a sudden, she wanted me to be in the book. I said, well, I've seen you before. Why you want me to be in the book now? She said, well, I didn't know you could do what you can do. So that's how we got.
You're fine. You're doing just fine. I knew you would. Any other questions? Logan?
Once you saw the final product and everything that you've done, what was your reaction? What emotions did you feel when you saw the final product?
Well, when I saw the final product, I told her I was very pleased with the results, and I appreciate her giving me the opportunity to be in the book. It was a great experience for me, and I'm glad today that I did it. And she came by, and we went over the final products, and I thought it was beautiful. In fact, I say I give you A+ for the.
Thank you. Mrs. Bearden?
Well, I thought it was a good idea, and I have always, but I admired him from the beginning. I opened with welcome arms when Reverend Hawkins told me about it. He said, do you feel comfortable in doing that? I said, sure. And so when she came that day, we bonded real well together. We did. And but I'm so happy to have this opportunity. Really, I said, when you work so long, 30 years, And at the end, someone comes and show you up like this. It makes you feel good, very rewarding. Yes, we thank you so much for it.
And she's a beautiful person.
I'm
so glad I met her.
I consider it one of my daughters.
He's always welcome to my home.
You shouldn't say that because you know I'll show up. I've gone to Mrs. Bearden's house. I've walked away with greens for Bobby. Not for me, for Bobby, from Mrs. Bearden. And the last time I was at Mrs. Floyd, I guess she heard my stomach grumble. She gave me a banana and insisted I take it. So, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Who are some of the women in your lives that you looked to as models as you were growing up?
Well, first of all, I looked at my mother, and Aunt Sweet, they all are passed on now, and Reverend Parsons' wife, and Lela J, and Doll Puffles. Those are some ladies that I grew up in the community with, and they were beautiful church-going people. They were mothers of the church, and they were just an example to follow. Those are some that I can think of right now.
I admired my mother and her group. My mother was very active in the Eastern Star Lodge, and I could go and see them perform, and I admired how those ladies dressed and how they carried themselves too. Very, very dignified at all times, and they were church mothers, and I've always admired those. But I had a chance to get back there to where I came from. My church celebrated 100 years, and I went back there this year. I was baptized at that church in Alabama, and they were looking up to me. I said, well, this is what they say, you look and act just like your mother. And that's very rewarding.
What are some experiences in your life and lessons that you've learned that you would like to pass down to the younger generation?
First of all, I would like for the young men to start putting up their pants. Put up their pants and take the earrings out of their ears. I hope I'm not intruding anybody's feeling. And as the young ladies, I would like for them to be more ladylike, carry themselves in a more respectful manner. A long time ago, girls just had to be girls, and now I don't know what they have turned out to be. But back in my day, you just had to be, when you went to Reverend Parsons' church, you just had to be a real lady. But now, it's just different. And I would just like to see them carry themselves in a more respectful manner and just be ladylike.
And I would like for you to use the word respect. Respect yourself first. And if you respect yourself, you respect others. I really like for people to respect people here. And I want you to teach those young girls and boys that they've got to do that now, to respect here. If they just do that, that will just carry your life all the way through. Respect yourself. If you do that, you respect others.
Wouldn't you like to see the young men pull their pants up? The other day I was looking out the window at the house and a young man came by and his pants was down here and his shorts was up here and he couldn't even walk. And and a long time ago, I taught school for about 40 years, and a long time ago I had the nerve to correct young men and young ladies, because today I'm afraid, because you don't know what the results might be. You might get shot, you might get cursed out. But a long time ago, I would go out into school and be a fight. I would break that fight up. Wouldn't I, Miss Beard?
That's right.
Get into that fight and break it up. But now I don't have that nerve.
I taught school for 36 years, home economics. And I would see that those girls and boys were well-groomed here. And they see me now, some of them ask me, Miss Beard, how am I looking? And so you're looking all right, but you got to work on those younger ones.
Mm-hmm.
When I retired, some of the students told me, Miss Bearden, we hate you retired. We want you to come back. I said, if I come back, I have to dress you all every morning.
And I told her, if I come back, you say you want to put this in the book, but if I come back, I told him I would be at CCA, that's a prison, up the road there, because I'm a strong disciplinarian, and they couldn't handle what I would do to them today. So that's why when I retired in 2006, I asked them not to let me come back to the school because I would be on my way to prison.
We have another question. Yes, ma'am. I'm trying. I'm one person. It is so hard to do the audio, the video, the transcribing, but I'm trying to put little movies together. Ideally, I'd love to give each family one, but I'm hoping to put those with the book. If I can get the book published, I don't have a publisher yet, so thank you. I need it. Thank you. Kevin.
I was going to ask Ms. Floyd right here, what did you teach?
I taught 5th and 6th grade math.
Well, let me
Wait, you can tell the rest of it.
Miss
Bearden, let Miss Bearden tell it. She knows my record.
Miss Floyd would teach math through singing, voice. When she'd be singing the multiplication tables to the kids to get there every morning, reading with multiplication tables and all that thing, adding, subtraction. But those kids got it though here. Yeah. It was a part.
It was a beautiful experience, yes.
I know my daughter was in that class. And they performed real well. She taught with math.
5th and 6th grade math.
Yes, ma'am, you had a question?
I taught those 2 young men right there. They turned out pretty good.
Those boys.
My oldest son's a doctor. Dr. Tracy. Stand up. And my other son. And stand up to Jerome. I'm proud of Jerome too. He's a supervisor at the Roadhouse. At the Roadhouse, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we moved into Mississippi about 10 years ago, but I am Southern. I lived all over the country, and I hear from so many of my friends outside of the South, they're so confused about Mississippi, and it's a very complicated place with a complicated past. But you have such beautiful, positive love for Mississippi and for the Delta. I would love for you to just tell me what one thing you want people to know about Mississippi.
Hospitality state.
Hospitality state.
Mississippi is the hospitality state. But you have to come and see. You hear so many bad things about us, but you know you have to come and see. When you come to Mississippi and see, you won't want to leave.
Mississippi's all right. I love
it. We had some Habitat for Humanity people coming to our county, building homes. You probably heard about them. And for 16 years, they lived with me. They come from Lockinolly, California, and we have made good friends. And all through the year, they just be roaring, talking about Mississippi. But you have to come to Mississippi to see. Come and see. It's all right. We're all right.
Yes, DJ.
How was it for you seeing Barack Obama elected president?
That part.
How was it seeing President Obama elected?
When he was elected president, that was beautiful. Very proud of him. I'm one of his favorite fans. I have all his pictures. She saw the pictures. I have letters from him because he's really my favorite president, and I just love him.
Mrs. Bearden, did you have anything you wanted to say about that?
They're very good. I hear from them too because I'm sending offerings and different things to them. But we're very proud. Very proud.
I'm proud of the work he's doing.
I'm proud of her. She's a strong, prepared lady.
She is.
One thing that I noticed going to all the mothers' homes, when I was growing up, it was the white Jesus and Martin Luther King on the wall. And now I'm seeing Obama on all the mothers, almost all their homes. Mrs. Campbell, the one that wanted me to take the white socks and put them on because she was afraid I was going to get pneumonia. She has, I think, 8 pictures of him hanging in her home, and she took her grandchildren's pictures down to put President Obama's up. Her grandson is not happy with her, and she does not care. So, yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about living in the Delta during the Civil Rights Movement.
It was almost like living in the Delta during the Civil Rights Movement was very tense. It was very tense. We had to sign some type of papers saying that we didn't belong to the NAACP. If you belonged to that organization, you couldn't work in the Delta. So it was very, very tense. And when immigration came in 1970, I was a little nervous because I'd heard so many things about the Delta, but everything went off. We didn't have any problems. Nice. Everything went off nice. So, but it has been a road to travel. Yes, it wasn't easy.
We have some questions in the back. Whoever wants to go. I can't. The question was, do you remember voting the first time?
Yes. Yes.
Who'd you vote for?
I had to be after the 70s. I had to take the test. My case. It had to be after 1970 because before then we couldn't vote. We weren't voting, but our superintendent, one night we had PTA and there was so much pressure there, and my husband was the principal, and one of the persons in the back came in, Miss Ben, do you vote? And my husband, he was a retired officer in the army and everything. He said, no. But the next morning, before we went to school, our nice superintendent called and told us, I want you and your wife to go over and vote. So we went over and we took the test. And he took it first. I told him, you go first. So you should tell me what's on.
We can take one more question. We have 5 minutes left, and I want to give some more information. Yes, sir.
I just want to know, what do you guys feel being in the book will do for your legacy and your family's legacy?
What do you think being in the book, your legacy will be being in the book? Is that correct, Addison?
Yes, ma'am.
Of our family's life. Legacy.
What do you think of your legacy of being in the book?
You can tell how a family has grown and has started off with very small incomes and things like that, and have progressed through, and have educated girls and boys, and we feel so proud because my husband issued so many diplomas to students who have gone out in the world and taken their place, and they come back and they've done well here. So the book will tell all about it. It can tell where we have come from. We have come from. Yeah.
Okay.
We have come a long way, and we still have a distance to go. But it will tell. We're proud of what we've done here, and we're proud of our students too, our products.
Okay.
My husband, 56 years, after 56 years, and he was principal of the school for 31 years. In fact, let me tell you something about him. The hall. Talk about the hall. My husband grew up in that area. He was born in that town, Tallahatchie County. That's how we got there. His father was sharecropper. Sharecropper means you share what you have at the end of the year. He was the oldest of 11 children. Way back in that time, you know, that was some. He walked to school 5 miles every morning, going to school in Tallahatchie County. He made the highest grade of all his class that year when he graduated for 8th grade, and they gave him a reward. He had the highest average. His reward was $1. But at that time, that was a lot. He felt so proud. Then he picked up and went to Charleston, who's in that same county, and he finished there. And in 1941, he went to service. He could type real. My husband was in fact, the rings that we married, that he gave me when we married, he worked for 25 cents a day. He said that when he was a boy,
He grew up in Webb, and he would go and mow the lawns and work around the house, and they paid him 25 cents a day. He said the man would give him 25 cents, and his wife would give him a nickel, and he would come home with 30 cents. But he said he was a boy. He said, I'm going to put this money up in a post office, and if I ever marry, I'm going to take this money and buy my wife's ring. Let me tell you.
See, wait a minute. Let
me say this about him also.
Wait a minute, please.
He took that money and he bought our ring.
This is the story of my life now.
And he was also principal for years that I worked with him.
Mrs. Bearden, I'm trying to save that.
He was a good principal, and he was known as the Hawk. And you remember that, Reverend? And he covered the ground that he walked on. When you could hear him coming down the hall with that stick, every step he made, everybody said, "That come the Hawk." If you weren't in your place, you would get in your place. He taught us well, and I taught school under him for many years, and he taught me how to weather the storm. He was a very good principal.
But if you want to hear any more of that story, you have to get the book.
You did fine. I know how to do stuff.
Before you go, I have to do a pitch. I designed some postcards that talks about the book, and I promised all of these mothers that I would give them their framed picture and a copy of the book.
Okay.
That's my goal. I have to get it published first.
Okay.
But I have a postcard that has some fundraising efforts on it. I'm trying to raise money so that I can get their pictures printed and framed for all the mothers. So if you're so inclined to help, here's some postcards. And I just want to acknowledge, I see a very friendly face in the audience, one of my mentors, Larry Wells. Larry did not know me, and he sent a postcard that I did, the first postcard, to Southern Living. Hadn't met me. Southern Living picked the story up. There are 6 pages of the book in this month's issue in Southern Living. And I just wanted to thank you, Larry.